Hey everyone, we know how hard it can be to keep up with the latest news in Israel, so if you haven't had the time to stay on top of what's what in the Holy Land with ILTV, have no worries. It's time for our new show this week in Israel, where we'll give you the scoop on everything you need to know about the last 7 days right from Tel Aviv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, here to keep you informed. The White House says it's ready to talk Middle East peace with the Palestinians, but it may be too late. The Palestinians claim they no longer view the United States as a neutral negotiator after the U.S. president recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital in December. And the Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas is now calling for a collective approach to the conflict.
أو بمفردها اليوم أن تحل صراعا إقليميا أو دوليا دون مشاركة أطراف دولية أخرى ولذلك لا بد وهذا رأينا وموقفنا من آلية دولية متعددة الأطراف لحل القضية الفلسطينية تنبثق عن مؤتمر دولي وتلتزم بالشرعية الدولية.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas is demanding an international Middle East peace conference to be convened by the middle of 2018. Abbas has been meeting with several world leaders to discuss replacing Washington as a new peace negotiator, with Russian to Indian leadership being brought to the table. In fact, Abbas wants the conference to be held in Moscow. The Palestinian leader says he met with U.S. President Trump several times in 2017 and expressed his people's readiness to reach peace. But the U.S., quote, went ahead and removed the issue of Jerusalem off the table by ignoring East Jerusalem as part of Palestinian territory. Well, the White House is refusing to play games.
The United States stands ready to work with the Palestinian leadership. Our negotiators are sitting right behind me, ready to talk. But we will not chase after you. The choice, Mr. President, is yours.
But in the meantime, U.S. President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and the U.S. Middle East envoy Jason Greenblatt have reportedly been working on a new peace plan.
The United States knows the Palestinian leadership was very unhappy with the decision to move our embassy to Jerusalem. You don't have to like that decision. You don't have to praise it. You don't even have to accept it. But know this, that decision will not change. So once again, you must choose between two paths. You can choose to denounce the United States, reject the U.S. role in peace talks, and pursue punitive measures against Israel in international forums like the UN. I assure you that path will get the Palestinian people exactly nowhere toward the achievement of their aspirations. Or you can choose to put aside your anger about the location of our embassy and move forward with us toward a negotiated compromise that holds great potential for improving the lives of the Palestinian people.
Well, it looks like the Israeli Prime Minister's aides are now getting entangled in his corruption cases. Israeli police are now alleging that Netanyahu's former spokesman, Nir Hefetz, tried to bribe a judge by offering him the position of Attorney General if he were to drop a fraud case against the leader's wife, Sarah.
ובאשר לטענה השנייה, שהיא לא פחות הזויה ולא פחות מרושעת, בעניין המינוי של היועץ המשפטי לממשלה, אני מעולם לא פניתי לניר חפץ בעניין הזה. הוא מעולם לא הציע לי דבר בעניין הזה, ואתם יודעים מה? אני לא מאמין שהוא העלה את האפשרות הזאת טבעית.
This is just one of two new bribery cases revealed by the courts on Tuesday. The second case also involves the former spokesman Nir Hefetz, who happens to be very close to Netanyahu. Hefetz was also allegedly part of the corruption involving the telecoms firm Bezeq, which is accused of accepting benefits in exchange for providing favorable coverage of Netanyahu on Walla. The Israeli news site also happens to be controlled by Bezeq's shareholder Shaul Elovitch. The Israeli Prime Minister and his wife have denied all wrongdoing, and Netanyahu has vowed to remain in office to serve out his term, which runs until 2019.
שערוריה. מביאים שתי טענות הזויות, שקריות, במסגרת מסע הרדיפה נגדי ונגד משפחתי שמתנהל כבר שנים.
The current Attorney General is considering indictments in all the investigations surrounding the Prime Minister, but a decision is possibly months away. The IDF has just released a report revealing what really led to the downing of an Israeli F-16 fighter jet by a Syrian anti-aircraft missile. And here's what's interesting. It looks like an error of judgment by the crew was the culprit rather than negligent behavior. The pilot and navigator allegedly acted according to the wrong priorities when they decided to guide a missile that they had fired instead of flying lower as soon as the missile had locked on. The Israeli Air Force has already absorbed the lessons of the investigation into training, and now the details will be presented to the public. This report comes just a day after the pilot who ejected himself from the plane walked out of an Israeli hospital in, quote, good condition. A miracle since he had been seriously wounded. The incident came amid a round of intense hostilities between Israel, Iran, and Syria after an Iranian drone infiltrated Israeli airspace from a launch base in Syria. The whole affair triggered Israeli airstrikes against Iranian targets in Syria. According to the New York Times, Iran is operating 10 military bases in Syria with up to 20,000 fighters. The Islamic Republic is reportedly training militias loyal to President Bashar Assad's regime for a possible battle with Israel. And two of the key training facilities are actually just near the border with Israel. The Israeli government has vowed to take every action necessary to combat the Iranian threat. Israeli fighter jets are continuing to strike Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip after 4 Israeli soldiers were wounded when a bomb exploded next to their patrol on the Gaza border fence. The soldiers were allegedly hit on Saturday afternoon when their patrol stopped along the border to remove a flag that had been placed at the fence during a protest earlier that day. A device planted below the flag then detonated, injuring 2 of the troops seriously and sending all 4 to the hospital.
התקרית היום בגבול רצועת עזה היא חמורה. אנחנו נגיב בהתאם, ואני שולח איחולי החלמה מלאה לפצועים.
Israel has responded swiftly, striking 18 Hamas terror targets within the Gaza Strip in a series of air raids and cross-border tank fire. The targets include observation posts, an attack tunnel, and Hamas weapons factories. Hamas has been firing back, setting off rocket sirens across southern Israel and sending residents running into bomb shelters around 3 in the morning. There haven't been any Israeli fatalities, but one Hamas rocket actually hit a house in the Israeli community of Sha'al al-Negev, causing significant damage. 2 Palestinians have been killed by IDF tank fire on the Gaza border after the Israeli army said they were approaching the fence in a, quote, suspicious manner. The Israeli military has launched an attack on Hamas's underground infrastructure in the Gaza Strip just hours after yet another rocket was shot into southern Israel. This marks the 3rd straight day of intense cross-border fighting between Israel and the Hamas terror group. Late last night, a projectile was fired into Israel, landing in an open area in the Sha'al al-Negev region. There was no immediate claim for responsibility, but Israel holds Hamas responsible for any violence that comes out of the Strip. The Israeli army is now likely striking tunnels dug in the southern Gaza Strip, but has not revealed if the strikes are from tank shelling or airstrikes. Fighting with the coastal enclave ramped up over the weekend after 4 soldiers were injured by an explosive device masked by a flag on the Gaza border fence. Later that day, a house in southern Israel sustained damage when a rocket hit it from Gaza. Israel has responded to the violence by attacking 18 Hamas targets in Gaza, and 2 Palestinians have been killed in the crossfire. Schools throughout Israel are taking extra precaution and preparing for potential rocket attacks. Search and rescue drills are being held across the country as tensions escalate for Israel on its northern and southern fronts. Today, the IDF Homefront Command, the Education Ministry, and local authorities are holding a series of drills for Israeli youth. Officials will simulate a scenario of a missile firing in every school, setting off an alarm signal that the students must learn to properly obey. The head of IDF operations, Major General Nitzan Alon, says the year 2018 has a potential for military conflict because of a, quote, gradual deterioration of relations. Israel is continuing to trade attacks with terrorists in the Gaza Strip, and war with Iran and its Lebanese proxy Hezbollah seems more likely than ever. The Israeli Prime Minister has taken to the stage in Munich to send a message loud and clear to Iran.
Israel will not allow Iran's regime to put a noose of terror around our neck. We will act without hesitation to defend ourselves, and we will act if necessary, not just against Iran's proxies that are attacking us, but against Iran itself.
Earlier this month, Israel shot down an Iranian drone that violated Israeli airspace. The drone launched from a base in Syria, which Israel proceeded to attack, along with several other Iranian military targets within the country. Now Netanyahu has just spoken at the Munich Security Conference with alleged evidence in hand.
Iran also denies that it committed an act of aggression against Israel last week, that it sent a drone into our airspace to threaten our people. Well, here's a piece of that Iranian drone, or what's left of it after we shot it down. I brought it here so you can see it for yourself. Mr. Zarif, do you recognize this? You should. It's yours. You can take back with you a message to the tyrants of Tehran. Do not test Israel's resolve.
The Israeli Prime Minister is warning the world that, quote, Tehran is the greatest threat.
I think it's time to stop them now. They're aggressive, they're developing ballistic missiles, they're not inspecting, and they're going to have a free highway to massive enrichment. This has to be changed.
But according to the Prime Minister, there's an upside.
Now, there has been one positive consequence of Iran's growing aggression in the region. It's brought Arabs and Israelis closer together as never before.
Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Zarif is hitting back.
Israel uses aggression as a policy against its neighbors. Mass reprisals against its neighbors, daily incursions into Syria, Lebanon, and other Arab countries. And once the Syrians have the guts to down one of its planes, it's as if a disaster has happened. That there is an interest in showing that there is a disaster happening in the region, that Iran is devouring the entire region, which is not the case. We don't believe in that. We don't believe that is in our interest. We don't believe that's possible. Let's be realistic. I mean, it's not out of the goodness of anybody. It's just the possibilities. It's not feasible.
During Zarif's speech, around 50 people took part in a protest against the Iranian regime in a main square in Munich, and the Israeli Prime Minister made sure to take note.
I give Mr. Zarif credit. He lies with eloquence. Last year at this conference, Zarif said that, I'm quoting, extremism is driven by lack of hope and respect. Well, if that's true, why does the Iranian regime deny its people hope and respect by jailing journalists and activists?
We've been reporting about a lot of tension on Israel's northern and southern fronts, but now we surprisingly have some good news about one of our neighboring countries. Israel's Delek Drilling and America's Noble Energy have just announced a historic $15 billion deal that will provide natural gas to Egypt. The two energy conglomerates are expected to supply around 64 billion cubic meters of natural gas to Egypt over the next 10 years. And as a result, Israel will now become one of Egypt's main natural gas providers. That's a big deal because Egypt is the Arab world's most populated country. The deal with Egypt follows a smaller one that Israel made with Jordan in 2016, which means Israel will now be providing natural gas to both of its Arab allies in the region. It's still unclear how the gas will be supplied, but Delek has said that it's possible that it will be supplied via a Jordanian-Israeli pipeline currently being built. Delek's controlling shareholder, Yitzhak Tshuva, is praising the new deal, saying, quote, the agreement will strengthen the relationship between Israel and its neighbors and increase economic cooperation. All right, the first deadline has passed for 200 Eritrean asylum seekers in Israel to choose between deportation or imprisonment. But it looks like no action has been taken as of yet. This is a major relief for activists who have been fighting to prevent Israel from expelling almost 40,000 African asylum seekers. The Israeli Population, Immigration and Border Authority has declined to explain why no action has been taken yet to implement Israel's controversial deportation plan. So far, 600 asylum seekers have been given notice that they have to decide between deportation to a third-party country or imprisonment in an Israeli jail indefinitely. The government has labeled this community as illegal infiltrators, but the vast majority, mostly Christians from Eritrea and Sudan, say they fled war, genocide, and conscription in a slave army for a better life in Israel. This is why most Western countries almost unanimously accept them as refugees. But to date, Israel has approved only 11 for refugee status in the country. The UN's chief refugee agency has entered talks with Israel that would see some deportees relocated to a country deemed safe, all in exchange for Israel absorbing the rest. Rwanda and Uganda have denied a secret deal with Israel to accept these asylum seekers, though Israel has already deported thousands to Rwanda in recent years. The majority of the African asylum seekers in Israel say they would prefer to be jailed rather than deported. And now Canada is condemning Israel for its expulsion policy, claiming the concept of deporting 600 asylum seekers per month is incoherent and unsafe. The North American country takes in more African refugees from Israel than any other nation. Well, it's been just days since Israeli police recommended the Israeli Prime Minister be indicted on bribery charges in 2 different grafts. But now it looks like Netanyahu will be questioned in yet another case. In case 4000, police suspect that the owner of the Walla News website, who also happens to be the controlling shareholder of the national telephone company Bezek in Israel, was swaying coverage of Netanyahu in exchange for benefits for Bezek. Netanyahu was the Minister of Communications during the time of the alleged deal and is now expected to be called in for questioning under caution. The news comes as 2 close associates of Netanyahu have been arrested in the past 24 hours. The police are also expected to call in the Prime Minister's wife, Sarah Netanyahu, for questioning because it's believed that she also tried to sway coverage of her family through her relationship with the wife of Walla's owner, Shaul Elovitch. The Israeli Prime Minister has once again denied any wrongdoing and is calling the latest accusations yet another baseless investigation under pressure from the media. He claims a media witch hunt is continuing in full force against his family. Now it's up to the Attorney General to decide whether or not to press charges against him in all 3 cases. There isn't any strict legal obligation for the Prime Minister to step down unless he's convicted in court, and his ruling government coalition appears to be stable for the time being. Tensions are rising between Israel and Poland after anti-Semitic remarks from the Polish Prime Minister. And now a series of swastikas and anti-Polish profanities have been discovered on the entrance to Poland's embassy in Israel. The whole fiasco began when Poland decided to pass a law imposing a jail sentence on those who suggest the country was implicit in the Holocaust. The move sparked international criticism, with many claiming that Poland was trying to evade complete responsibility for its role in World War II.
We have to stand strong for the memory of our brothers and sisters murdered in the Shoah. But today, more than ever, we must work to educate the world, even some of the leaders, about that dark time.
And then over the weekend, the Polish Prime Minister made a shocking statement after an Israeli reporter asked him whether he himself could be penalized for telling a story in Poland about his mother who survived the Holocaust and says some Poles collaborated with the Nazis. The Polish leader responded by equating Jewish perpetrators with Polish, Ukrainian, Russian, and German perpetrators. Israeli leaders across the political spectrum are calling his words outrageous,
saying that our people collaborate with the Nazi is a new law.
But the Polish government says their prime minister's comments were not intended to deny the Holocaust or allege that Jewish victims bore responsibility. A group of visiting NFL players are about to wrap up their trip here in Israel, but not before the Israeli prime minister had something to say about it. Netanyahu is asking the visiting NFL delegation to use their influence back home to gather support for the Jewish state. The 7-player delegation, which includes the NFL's only Jewish brothers, Jeff and Mitchell Schwartz, met with the prime minister after spending the past few days traveling around Israel. During the meeting, Netanyahu took a trip down memory lane and told the players about his first NFL game in the 1980s and how by the end of the game he was standing and screaming in excitement. At the end of the visit, the Schwartz brothers presented Netanyahu with a blue and red jersey that each had his nickname Bibi written on the back. Now, during their trip to Israel, the players visited the Dead Sea, Jerusalem's Western Wall, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip border. The organizers of the trip, American Voices in Israel, say they hope the NFL players now have a better understanding of what's going on in Israel by seeing what's actually happening on the ground. All right, this weekend was an exciting one for Israel's Winter Olympics team. 2 Israeli figure skaters made an impressive showing at the Olympic finals on Saturday, with veteran Alexei Baichenko racking up a rare top 10 finish. All right. He may not have taken home a medal, but this is a big deal for Israel. Baichenko finished in 9th place with almost 173 points, sneaking in just 1 place above U.S. fan favorite Adam Rippon. The Israeli skater Daniel Samochin wasn't far behind him, finishing in 11th place with just over 170 points. These are personal best scores for both Israeli athletes, adding an even sweeter touch to Israel's presence in the Winter Olympics. A record 10 athletes are competing for Israel in the 2018 Winter Olympics, the largest delegation in Israeli history. All right, this may be the weirdest story that you've ever heard, or possibly the coolest. An Israeli research team has just discovered a way to grow a miniature version of the human brain. Yes, you heard that right. This little brain of theirs may pave the way for scientists to better understand a dangerous congenital defect. About 1 in every 30,000 babies is born with a smooth brain. That baby goes on to suffer from severe developmental difficulties and a much lower life expectancy. Well, scientists from the Weizmann Institute of Science are on a mission to understand more about the factors that cause the brain to wrinkle, so that they can try to address the defects. They figured out how to grow simplified miniature versions of bodily organs in test tubes. Don't ask me how. The little brain that they've created allows them to track wrinkle development, and now the scientists say they have a much better understanding of what makes a brain wrinkle or smooth. The researchers are hoping their findings can open new possibilities for understanding developmental disorders like epilepsy and schizophrenia. That's it for this week's Roundup. Tune in next Friday for our next episode of This Week in Israel. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from Tel Aviv.